could act alone, that a single president could bend global trade to his will. For years, Trump's tariffs were sold as the ultimate show of strength, a sign that the United States no longer needed negotiation or permission. But when the Supreme Court struck them down, everything changed. What began as an economic maneuver has now become a constitutional reckoning. The court ruled that Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs was unconstitutional. Those powers, they said, were meant for crises, not for rewriting trade law by decree. In other words, Trump had taken a tool meant for war or disaster and used it to reshape everyday economics. Trump reacted the only way he knows how, with fury. At a rally that night, he called the justices fools, lapdogs, and traitors to the Constitution. He accused them of being swayed by foreign interests, and within hours, he signed a new executive order, this time imposing a 10% global tariff. By morning, he raised it to 15%. It wasn't about trade anymore. It was about power, about testing how far the presidency could stretch the meaning of emergency. Economists have long warned that tariffs are just taxes with better marketing. When products arrive at American ports, companies pay the tariff to the U.S. government and then raise prices to cover their losses. The result? American families foot the bill. Between 2018 and 2023, tariff collections tripled to nearly $270 billion a year. That's money that came not from Beijing or Brussels, but from Illinois, Ohio, and Texas, from the very people who believed the tariffs were making them strong again. And what did America get in return? Virtually nothing. The trade deficit barely changed, shrinking by just $2 billion, less than 0.1% of the economy. The manufacturing revival never came. Farmers lost foreign markets they may never recover. Inflation soared, and working families paid hundreds more every month for cars, food, and everyday goods. The Supreme Court's ruling was supposed to bring clarity, but it may have opened a new crisis instead. Trump's defiance of the court, his decision to reimpose tariffs by executive order after losing in court, sets up a direct confrontation between the branches of government. Legal scholars are calling it the most dangerous constitutional conflict since Watergate. Because if a president can simply declare an economic emergency whenever Congress refuses to act, then the limits of executive power are no longer limits at all. Inside Washington, the reaction has been chaotic. Traditional conservatives applauded the court for restoring congressional authority. Trump loyalists, meanwhile, called for investigations into the justices themselves. A handful of Republican senators are even floating the idea of new legislation to grant Trump explicit power to set tariffs unilaterally, a move that constitutional experts warn would permanently weaken Congress. Meanwhile, U.S. allies are bracing for impact. European and Asian trade ministers met in emergency sessions overnight, describing Trump's new 10% global tariff as a declaration of economic isolation. Markets dipped worldwide. Canada, Japan, and the EU began discussing coordinated retaliation. And once again, global headlines are dominated by a single familiar question. Can the United States still be trusted to lead? Because when power is built on crisis, the only way to keep it is to make sure the crisis never ends.